good evening. This is a meeting of the Milford Finance Committee, April 29th, 2026. The first item on the agenda is the approval of the prior meeting's minutes, which have been circulated. Have a motion?
Motion approved.
Motion by David.
Second.
Seconded by Michael. We have people on Zoom, so roll call. David.
Yes.
Yes.
Abstain.
Yes.
Yes.
Lauren.
Yes.
Jerry.
Jerry.
Yes.
We're going to call that unanimous with 2 abstentions. Oh, Jerry?
That
was a yes.
What do you,
There's a motion to approve the minutes.
I don't think I was present at the last meeting, so I can't,
Okay,
I have
so
to abstain.
unanimous with 2 abstentions. Invitation to speak. No one. Okay, the next item on the agenda is the articles on the warrant. We're going to take up Article 16 first.
Good evening.
Good evening. For the record, you folks are?
Rick Valani, Town Administrator, and I'll let Chris introduce himself.
Hi, my name is Chris Futo. I'm a partner at the law firm of Foley Hoag, and I am representing the town in the matter of Kara McGuire versus the town of Milford, which is pending in Superior Court in Worcester.
Has Foley Hoag been in this since the inception of the
It
litigation?
has, yes.
Okay, so earlier today, a PowerPoint, if you will, was circulated. How do you guys want to proceed? Do you want to walk us through the...
We would like to walk through the PowerPoint fully, and then obviously there'll be time for questions after that.
Okay.
Okay?
Thank you for having me tonight. My plan for today is just to fill the Finance Committee in on the allegations at issue in the McGuire case, the procedural history for the case, and discuss generally the risks associated with proceeding to trial in the case, which is scheduled for December, and then to present the settlement proposal, which has been agreed upon pending approval by a town meeting. So, and that will allow you as this body to either recommend it or not recommend it, but it will be going before town meeting for approval. So the next slide. Next slide. So a little bit about me. I am a employment lawyer. I represent companies, municipalities in employment disputes and provide them with employment counseling. I was retained by the town in May of 2022 when Sergeant Kara McGuire first brought her claims publicly. In Massachusetts, the first thing you have to do is you have to file a complaint with the Massachusetts Commission Against Discrimination.
2022.
Jerry, can you go on mute, please?
Sure.
Thank you.
So,
Find it.
The plaintiff in this matter is Kara McGuire. She's a sergeant with the Milford Police Department. She joined the Milford Police Department in 1995, and she was promoted to sergeant in 2006. She has filed, she's filed a lawsuit alleging gender discrimination, hostile work environment, and retaliation. So specifically, she made a number of allegations. One, she alleges that she was denied transfers and opportunities for promotion. She says that she alleges that the command staff, the various chiefs throughout the years, denied her lateral transfers and promotions to deputy chief. She claimed that it was a discriminatory decision not to consider her more fully for the chief of police position, and that certain lieutenant positions that were created, she was not selected for. She also claims a denial of responsibilities, training, and advancement in recent years, specifically related to also her being a subject of an IA investigation, which she says hampered her career advancement.
IAB, Internal Affairs?
Yes. And she alleges that she was subjected to a higher standard than male colleagues, citing the internal affairs investigation and other discipline that other written verbal warnings or verbal discussions that she received, says she was a victim of hyperscrutiny. And then finally, she alleges that she was subjected to a hostile work environment, including by male officers making her the subject of sexual comments or rumors about her personal life. Next slide. So as I mentioned, she first, in Massachusetts, before you can sue for discrimination, you have to file a charge of discrimination with the MCAD, which she did in May 12, 2022. That's when we were retained. In August of that year, she withdrew the charge after we submitted our position statement in the matter, denying her allegations. And she was permitted to withdraw the case. The MCA dismissed the case, and she then subsequently, on October 7th of 2022, she filed her complaint in Massachusetts Superior Court here in Worcester County. She has since amended the complaint twice to add allegations based on employment actions that occurred since the original filing of her complaint. Most recently regarding alleged retaliation that she says that decisions that were made post her filing the MCAD complaint. This case has gone on for a number of years. It was a case that involved extensive discovery, many depositions of officers within the police department were taken. That lasted generally between through the end of 2024. In June of last year, we filed a summary judgment motion seeking a judgment as a matter of law on all of her claims, essentially arguing that even if you resolved all factual disputes in Kara McGuire's favor, that the town is entitled to judgment on her claims, essentially that she couldn't meet her burden of proof on these allegations. A hearing was held this November. Next slide. And we just got our summary judgment decision on April 16th. The court did dismiss her gender discrimination as it related to the failure to hire her for the chief of police position in 2023. And it did agree with the town that there were a number of discrete actions that occurred prior to the statute of limitations that she could not seek recovery on, including a failure to promote her to a deputy chief position in 2021, also a denial of a request for her to attend the sergeant school way back in 2006. However, the court denied summary judgment as to the remainder of the allegations in the case, reasoning that the claims involved issues of fact that could not be resolved at summary judgment that needed to be resolved by a jury. This is not unexpected and is not unusual in the practice of employment discrimination cases in Massachusetts. Generally, Superior Court judges who are hearing summary judgment motions are where they can find some dispute of fact, where one party says one thing and the other party says the other, and there's not conclusive evidence as to what happened. They will say that issue needs to go before a jury. I am not in a position to make that assessment. The person is entitled to trial on those matters. So that's what happened here. The trial is set for this case on December 7th. It was originally scheduled for this May, but we pursued a mediation with Ms. McGuire and with Sergeant McGuire at the beginning of March, and as part of that and part of the settlement, tentative settlement agreement, which I will discuss in a bit, it was agreed that we would move to postpone the trial until December so that town meeting would have the ability to weigh in on whether it wants to agree to move forward with the settlement with Sergeant McGuire. Next slide. So at trial, a question that is going to be, I assume you may have, is what would she be able to recover if she wins at trial? Well, Sergeant McGuire would be able to recover compensatory damages for lost back pay, for front pay, and the value of benefits that she was denied because of the alleged discrimination, if there's a finding of any discrimination or retaliation. She'd also be entitled to compensatory damages for emotional distress. The court could award punitive damages, which are not based on any damage that Sergeant McGuire has suffered, but are awarded in employment discrimination cases where there's a finding of discrimination, in certain instances where the jury finds that an employer did in fact engage in discrimination or retaliation. She's also entitled to prejudgment interest on her back pay and emotional distress damages. That's set by statute. It's 12% per annum. So from when until up to the date of the award, if there is one, of the jury verdict, that's from when the interest will be calculated. And finally, she'd be able to recover her attorney's fees and reasonable litigation costs. Next slide. A bit on attorney's fees and costs. This is mandatory. We have a fee shifting provision in Massachusetts. So if there is a finding of employment discrimination or retaliation on any part of the allegations which Sergeant McGuire raises, so as to any of the alleged promotions which he says that she was denied in a discriminatory, retaliatory manner, she would be entitled to recover her attorney's fees that she incurred throughout the entire case. And if the matter goes through to trial, I don't know this. We don't have insight into what her attorney's fees have been, but she's represented by a reputable Boston law firm, and I would expect that her fees would likely exceed, as of the time of a verdict, over $1 million. Next slide. So I wanted to present to you sort of looking at the possibility of going to trial and having an adverse finding by a jury, what type of jury awards could potentially be levied against the town. Jury verdicts in analogous gender discrimination cases in Massachusetts have been average around $2.8 million. There have been recent high-profile verdicts against the state police in gender discrimination cases, which have resulted in awards ranging from anywhere from $6 million to nearly $12 million in damage. And so there is a pattern of substantial compensatory and punitive damages awards where juries have found that public entities have engaged in gender discrimination against their employees. Next slide. And this is just a couple of just a few examples from where we've pulled this data, but there was a case against the state police by a veteran major who alleged gender discrimination and retaliation, and alleged that she was disciplined more harshly than male colleagues, and the jury returned a verdict of nearly $12 million. That includes $1 million emotional distress award and a $10 million punitive damages award. Next slide. We have a case that where a female police officer alleged the same types of claims that Sergeant McGuire raised. This is in her case. She says she was subjected to inappropriate gender-based and sexual comments, assigned more administrative duties than her male counterparts, and that she was faced harassment and retaliation after she was narrowly missed by another officer's gunfire on the job. The jury returned a verdict in the favor of the plaintiff in the amount of $4.346 million. again, you can see from the slide, there was a $2.2 million award, roughly, of compensatory damages, and then she was awarded $1 million in punitive damages. A bit about these numbers: these do not include the attorney's fees that they would be entitled to recover for getting a successful jury verdict. Next slide. And then there's a recent case out of the town of Winthrop where there were similar claims, and there was an award of $2 million in that case, including $676,000 in emotional stress damages and $1.352 million in punitive damages. Next slide. And then we have this other state police case. This one was a little different because it involved both gender and race discrimination, but there were alleged discriminatory hiring and promotion practices. We're talking about an award here of $6.2 million. Again, $4 million in punitive damages, $1 million in compensatory damages. Next slide. So, in light of the risks associated with proceeding to trial and having an adverse finding, adverse jury verdict against the town, the select board, along with the town administrator and town council, had us participate in a mediation with Sergeant McGuire to see if we could resolve this case prior to trial. Next slide. That mediation was held on March 3rd. Didn't result in a resolution, but the parties continued discussions. Ultimately, at the end of those negotiations, Sergeant McGuire communicated that the minimum that she would agree to settle the case, short of going to trial, at this point was $2.75 million. So the select board reached a tentative agreement with Sergeant McGuire. We're still working on the terms of the written term sheet, but that is expected to be finalized shortly for that amount, but making clear that it was subject to town meeting approval. Town meeting would have to ultimately be the decision maker as to whether to proceed with the settlement or go to trial. So if the settlement is approved, Sergeant McGuire will be placed on administrative leave through August 2026, at which point she'd retire. Next slide. So at this point, I wanted to turn it over to you to answer, to the members of the committee to ask any questions that they have for me, with one introductory sort of caveat on this is, I realize that you have questions, and I want to be able to answer those questions to the fullest of my ability. I am hindered by two things. One, by statute in Massachusetts, in the terms of our mediation agreement, what was discussed in the context of the mediation with Sergeant McGuire is confidential, and I cannot reveal that. That's particularly given the case that I understand we are being televised through local television right now. Two, I cannot disclose communications that I had with town council or the select board, nor can I communicate, nor can I answer questions that would require me to reveal the substance of those communications to me. They're protected by attorney-client privilege, and if I were to reveal them in this setting publicly, it would could potentially result in the waiver of that privilege, meaning all of our communications would be subject to inquiry. So with that, I open it. That's the conclusion of my presentation, and I'm happy to answer any questions you may have.
Okay, thank you, Chris. I'm going to make several comments, and then I'll open it up to the rest of the committee. First, I'd like everybody to keep in mind our purpose here is to determine what is in the financial best interest of the town in connection with the set of facts that are in front of us. That's what we should be focusing on. If people have any other thoughts and concerns, there's a town meeting coming up in 3 weeks, there's another forum. but let's try to keep our focus on what our objective is tonight. Now, Chris, I've been a bankruptcy lawyer for 35 years. We're frequently having to bring settlements in front of the bankruptcy court. And the factors for settlement versus litigation are, among other things, likelihood of success on the merits, costs of litigation, et cetera. Now, I fully appreciate that you have to be circumspect, because if this were to be defeated at town meeting, you have to try the case. So you don't want to make any admissions aside from attorney-client communications, et cetera. I completely understand that. Is it fair to say that you think the risk is more than negligible? Because if it was negligible, we would presumably want to try the case?
I think it's fair to say there is, once you get past the summary judgment stage, and there are disputes of fact in an employment discrimination case, where it's going to be up to a jury to decide who is, what side, which version of a chain of events that they want to adopt, which ones that they're going to agree to. That anytime you reach that point in an employment discrimination case, the risks are more than negligible. Right? There is always, what a settlement buys you is certainty. You know what's going to happen. At a trial, you do not know how a jury is going to side. Could a jury come to the decision that none of the claims have merit and award nothing? Yes. Could the jury hear all of the evidence and determine and side in Sergeant McGuire's favor on all of the remaining claims? Yes. So the risks are, and this is without me speaking about the specific strength and weaknesses of the claims in this case. Anytime you get before a jury, you are at risk of a significant judgment, and particularly in an employment discrimination case before a state court in Massachusetts.
You made a reference earlier to some issues being open in the term sheet. Is there anything material that we should be talking about here?
No, it's working on the details of the language of the term sheet, but otherwise, the economic terms and the substantive terms are not changing in any way, shape, or form.
Okay. It appears that the summary judgment ruling came after the settlement in principle. Does the summary judgment ruling have any effect, in your opinion, on the merits of the settlement?
It does not. The summary judgment case was actually what we had anticipated the summary judgment ruling would be going into mediation. In fact, it actually was more favorable to the town in that it dismissed not just the time-barred claims, but any claims related to Sergeant McGuire not receiving the chief of police position. So, however, the risks associated with all of the other claims, because it's important to understand with this case, there are numerous discrete adverse employment actions that took place because there were a number of promotions made within the police department over a span of years, and in each turn, Sergeant McGuire was not hired for those positions. So each one forms the basis of a gender discrimination claim. So while it's great that we got the chief of police position out, and it may impact damages going forward if there were a jury verdict and what the jury would consider in terms of who her comparators were for had she been promoted or not promoted, it does not affect, in my view, what the settlement value of the case was.
Let's talk about legal costs for a second, because that's obviously a factor to be determined aside from the risk of any judgment. You had projected their legal could be $1 million, and we've got our own legal. Mm-hmm. Can you give us an estimate of what we incurred to date?
Yeah, we've incurred roughly 1.6 million.
1.6 million.
Over the past 4 years.
And presumably, that $1 million that you referenced before, that was just her fees.
Those are her fees.
So we would have your trial fees in addition to the $1 million and what you've already incurred.
Correct.
Okay. I'm going to stop there, and I'm going to open it up to the floor.
Andy, one quick question. That 1.6, that's already spent?
Yes,
That's incurred.
yes.
Gone.
Did we already fund it, or is that on top of?
It's already been funded, already been paid. Maybe except for one, maybe the
We've been
March.
paying- we've been
Yeah,
paying as we
maybe-
go.
Maybe the April billing.
Get the bill for this week.
Be quick. No, yeah. Yes. Yep.
Bill first.
I'm assuming that in August, when Sergeant McGuire retires, she will become eligible for Milford's pension?
Yeah, I'm not precise on the workings of the pension, but my understanding is
Zach
she
is
will.
nodding yes.
The answer is yes.
The answer is yes.
The answer is yes. Yeah.
I'd rather defer to him than answer it myself.
Perfectly understandable. Michael?
You cited cases where the state or the municipalities, those cases were found for the plaintiff. How often are these similar cases resolved where it's found for the benefit of either the state police or the municipalities?
I can't speak to sort of the
Approximately. I mean, are we talking never?
Well,
Are we talking once in a while?
well, because the reason why I can't speak to that is because most of these cases do not go to trial and get resolved at trial. I'd say in employment discrimination cases in Massachusetts in general, very few actually go to trial, and most resolve before that. As I sit here today, I can't point to any jury verdicts where I have found zero, where there have not, that have gotten to a trial, to a jury verdict, where there has not been a finding of liability, but we can certainly look into that.
Thank you.
Bobby?
Thank you. Pardon me. Yeah, one quick question. I'm looking at the wording of the article, and contained in the wording of the article is the requirement that we hire an independent consultant of the police department's hiring and promotional practice with a report to issue containing findings and potential recommendations relative to whether the process is a fair, objective, and non-discriminatory, or take any other action in relation thereto. Is the cost of that included in the cost of this article?
The settlement
So
is-
my question then, Rick, excuse me, I'm
That's
sorry.
okay, myself.
Is, so we're talking, what, 2.4, 1.6, how much do you expect this to cost us?
2.75 for the settlement.
Yep.
We were looking to appropriate $50,000 for the study. I do not think it will cost that much. I have some preliminary quotes that are less than that, but $50,000 is what the
Will
additional.
that come in the form of another article, or?
No, it's within that article.
Oh, it is within this?
That
Okay, all
language
right,
is
that was my
included.
question. All
I'm
right,
sorry.
okay.
So
No, no,
2.8 if you want to have
Got
a
it,
number
got it,
for that
got it,
article. Okay?
Thank you.
Yeah.
And the deliverable on that would be what? It would be a report?
Report with recommendations.
Okay.
Yeah, I think you need to have that included.
I know you don't want to get into this in too much detail tonight, so I'm not going to hold you to this, but we should consider the extent to which any of this can be used for other aspects of the town, or if there's anything that we can do that's not going to cost a lot of money just to raise
I
awareness.
suppose whatever the recommendations would be, we could see what and how and if they're applicable to other departments, for example, or other units within town. But again, I can't predict that right
I
now.
think Leanne's trying to get your attention.
Let's see, Lauren has a question.
I do. So Milford has a harassment prevention policy, and it states that any violation of that policy will be subject to disciplinary measures up to and including termination. So I read the whole file, and I would encourage anybody who's on the Finance Committee, town meeting members, to read the memorandum and decision in order of the motion for summary judgment by the judge. I'd also recommend anybody read the joint pretrial memo and the complaint. I know that 77% of women police officers have experienced sexual harassment and discrimination. And my concern is, okay, I don't have a problem with paying the money because I think that we're going to get out easy if we pay it. So I don't have a problem with the amount. My concern financially going forward is preventing this going forward. So I think that if you read the facts of this and you look at the parties who were allegedly saying and doing the things they did that resulted in the only female sergeant to lose her job and not be able to retire when she should have, being essentially forced into early retirement. I think we really should think as a town, why is it that that's happening? And how are we going to correct it, and who is going to pay for it in the police department and or the town? Because right now only the taxpayers are paying for it, and that doesn't seem right to me. So I'm hoping that this independent consultant is going to be auditing the police department with that in mind. Is that correct?
I'm not going to comment on that. We're going to do a study with recommendations. Can't predict what those recommendations will be. The focus here tonight should be, do we go favorable or unfavorable? I mean, I think you're speculating. I don't know. And I'm not going to predict or not predict what, if anything, will.
I don't think I'm speculating, Rick. I think I'm asking very clearly, somebody is alleging a hostile environment, right? We're settling this on the assumption that we may have liability for a hostile environment. So that suggests to me that any women who are working in the police department right now might be subjected to a hostile environment. And I think the town has a responsibility to make sure that that is addressed. 100% correct.
Chris?
Yeah,
Chris,
I just want to address that factually. One thing is, I just want to be clear, is that the allegations raised in this complaint pertain only to Sergeant McGuire and are specific to Sergeant McGuire. So in the course of discovery in this case, there's never been any evidence to suggest that any other female officers are making allegations similar to Sergeant McGuire's. And then second, I would say all of these documents that Ms. Milton referenced are public records. I would be very clear about a couple of those documents. One, she mentioned the pretrial memo. That contains Sergeant McGuire's version of the facts of the case, along with the town's version of the facts of the case. As of this point, there has been no adjudication as to the merits of those specific claims. And the summary judgment decision references allegations in the complaint and various issues of which there are dispute of fact, which means there are two versions of the events, and we need a jury to, there's going to be no finding as to what is found legally on those issues until a jury rules on them.
So the consultant report, Rick, is that going to be a matter of public record?
At some point it would, I believe.
Absolutely. Okay, so I've listened to this exchange, and I understand the concerns. I don't think there's any more that we can do about that tonight. I'm sure you've heard the concerns, Rick. When the consultant report comes out, everyone will have a chance to review it. If anyone on this committee or in the town, for that matter, wants to raise further questions on it, they'll have an opportunity, whether it's here or before the select board or some other forum, right? Is that agreed? David?
I just want to go back to your opening statement about why we're here tonight. And I think it's our role to assess the risk, right?
Yeah.
To say favorable, unfavorable, if we want this to move forward.
Right.
Based on risk. Complaint, that's out of our league, right? The second issue is when Zach comes up and tells us where the funding is going to come from this, that's our favorable, unfavorable as well.
Yep.
I think that's it. I think we're going off a little bit off the rails here a little bit to say what might and may not happen in the future. That's why I think we have the HR person on the Zoom right now.
No, she's not here.
Actually, she's here for another hour.
Oh, no, I'm just saying not why she's here, but if you want to say what going forward and put checks and balances place, we have a select board that oversees, I believe, an HR person, and the HR, let's do this like a regular company where the HR person oversees and makes sure the harassment
Okay, Jerry,
doesn't happen.
understood, David. Jerry, you have a question?
Yes, Andy, I have two questions. Number one, why is the FinCom at this point in time, during a critical budgeting process, just now being informed of a potential $2.75 million an outlay plus legal expenses to settle it, which could be more. Why are we just now learning of this? This is incredibly substandard to what is expected, number one. Number two, someone just mentioned, what is the source of funding? And if it is what I believe it to be, the stabilization count, we need to make sure everybody understands that you cannot take money out of the stabilization account without 2/3 vote. And in the past, getting 2/3 vote is not an easy matter. So before you start mounting all your ducks in order, thinking you got it all set, you still got to get this across town meeting floor. And if it doesn't go across town meeting floor with a positive vote, then you're going to trial.
Understood.
Has everybody thought that out very carefully?
Well, Rick is
Answer the first question first.
What was the first question again? You know the answer to the first question, Jerry. Legal matters, the article number 5 in the warrant, are under the jurisdiction of the select board, number one. Number two, this is litigation. It is ongoing litigation. It is done in executive session. Why? To preserve the right to defend as we need to defend. So that's the answer to that question. The second question, you didn't tell me anything we didn't already know. We know it's a 2/3 vote. I agree with you. It may be hard to get that across the finish line. And if we don't, we try the case. I understand that. Everyone understands that. Whether you go favorable or unfavorable, that's the process we follow. And if town meeting goes different than what you say or I say, that's the process we follow. I understand that. We accept that. So that's the answer to your two questions.
Was there a trial originally scheduled for May of '26?
Yes.
That may have been, based on my experience as a lawyer, part of the genesis of the timing of the settlement, because there was a looming trial?
We were waiting, I could say, we were waiting for the summary judgment decision.
Okay.
Typically, you want to have that before you go to a mediation, so you know exactly what claims are going to be before a jury. When it became clear that the court was not going to issue a summary judgment decision, we put a mediation date on the calendar as early out as we possibly could before the trial date. And as soon as we had, I think both parties jointly went to the court and said, hey, listen, we have a tentative agreement on settlement. It has to go before the town meeting. We want to have this process play out. So can we get an extension to have the trial until December? And the court granted that.
To further answer your question, I think what you're saying, when do cases settle? They settle many times prior to trial. Why? Because both parties are assessing the risk and determining whether or not to settle. I think Chris would tell you that.
Yeah, I can tell you that, absolutely. And I've had cases that have settled a week before trial, days before trial. Unfortunately, given the number of factual disputes in this case and the pretty diametrically opposed positions on many of the central facts in this case, we were not in a position to mediate this case until when we did. And we would not have gotten to this figure, which we got to after substantial negotiation, until we did it at the time that we did it.
Okay. You have a committed term sheet, though, right now. Is that?
We have a term sheet. We have a deal. We have a tentative agreement, a binding settlement agreement.
You have a binding
in place.
agreement?
Yes.
Okay.
We are putting the finishing touches on the details of that term sheet, and by the time we go to town meeting, that will be signed.
Okay, so we wouldn't hear 2 weeks from now that the term sheet blew up?
No.
Okay. Okay.
Real quick, who's presenting this warrant?
Who's presenting
You
this?
mean a town meeting?
Not the town meeting, yeah.
We'll determine that. Chris will probably be
I will
back.
be there to.
You gonna be there?
Oh, yeah,
I will be there to
you'll-
present on it. Yes.
And again, we'll figure that out.
Okay, is there, Jerry, did you have another question? Or are you done?
Yes, I did. Go ahead, Lauren, but yes, I did have another question. I guess I'm hearing a number of 2.75 million that is locked and loaded as a settlement. But what is the town's total cost or amounts that are going to be needed to resolve this issue? How much more money are we going to be spending to bring this to a conclusion? And I would like a hard and fast number. I don't like it just floating out there. So does anybody have that answer?
Well, from what I heard, because Bob had asked that question earlier, you guys can correct me if I'm wrong, it's 2.75 for the settlement, it's 50,000 for the consultant, it's 1.6 accrued to date in legal, that's 4.4. And I assume that between now and town meeting, we will have some relatively modest bills to get this cleaned up and then to get the settlement consummated. Is that a fair assessment?
You will have bills pertaining to my presentation to you, my presentation to town meeting, and then if town meeting approves this, it would be putting together a final settlement agreement, which the parties will sign in advance of August.
In my experience, everything you just talked about, it would probably add like 1% or so to what we're talking
Compared to
about.
the cost that the town has incurred to date, the events and the work to be done after this, if this is approved by town meeting, will be, yes, like very, very, very small compared to that total amount.
Yes, Val?
So if I understand right, we got to come up with an additional 2.8 million.
Correct, plus any fees incurred by Chris
Plus
to bring it to finality.
The 1.6 has already been spent, already been paid for.
Correct.
2.75 for the settlement. You said about 50 grand.
Hoping less, but
Well, but about 50 grand, so it's 2.8.
Chairman.
That's the article. All right, so hold on. Lauren, did you have another question?
I just had a factual question I'm just confused about. Why is it that there was no settlement at the MCAD level?
Because she withdrew her complaint at the MCAD prior to the conclusion of the investigation to sue the town in state court.
But she hadn't received, so she received a probable cause finding from the MCAD?
No, she didn't. The rules,
didn't.
The rules allow complainants at the MCAD, after a certain amount of time has passed from which they filed the complaint, to request a right to sue letter and remove the case, even though there has not been a finding of probable cause or lack of probable cause at the MCAD. There was no finding either way at the MCAD.
Michael?
Did either party reach out at that time? The only reason I'm asking is because we wouldn't be here right now if the parties had reached out at the early stages to try to come to resolution. That's my 2 cents. But I make a motion unless anybody else to approve it, because I don't think we have any choice.
We'll take that motion in 1 second. Michael, you had a question?
I have a sort of worst-case scenario question. Let's say hypothetically, it doesn't make the 2/3 through town meeting, you go to trial, a finding for the plaintiff far beyond what we're talking about right now is made. The question is that payment required usually immediately in lump sum, or are there payment arrangements allowed for settlements like this? And I'm thinking on behalf of the town of Milford.
You handle that.
Yeah, let me handle that. So
Go ahead, Zach.
if this gets defeated at town meeting, right now, we are suggesting that it's funded through stabilization. As we've heard, it'll be a 2/3 vote. If it gets defeated, it goes to trial, and a judgment comes down, it is automatically required to be added to the tax recap without any further appropriation. There's a mechanism where it directly is added, and it needs to be paid out.
Immediately.
Yes, Bob?
Yeah, I will second the motion made by Lauren, recommending a favorable recommendation on Article 16. I will
Okay,
second the motion.
so there's a motion by Lauren, there's a second by Bob, and just to be clear, this is favorable, unfavorable on the article. We're dealing with the budget later on, so we can approve the form of funding. If it gets approved, it will approve the form of funding separately as part of the budget discussion. Yes, Paul?
Can I ask a question?
Yeah.
He had mentioned that there was a couple points.
He, Chris?
Yes, Chris had mentioned that there were a couple points in the summary judgment that were dismissed. can those be brought up in a trial to show a pattern of oversight, or do those have to be left off because they were already dismissed because of statutory reasons versus, would that be something they could show a pattern of neglect or whatever?
So the answer to your question is that the facts of the allegations that she made that occurred prior to the running of the statute of limitations, she can present evidence of those as to support her claims that are existing that are timely. As to the chief of police position, I can't get into more fully than that, other than to say it is at the judge's discretion what evidence comes in and out, and I would anticipate that the parties would be engaging in some motion practice prior to trial, what's called the motion in limine, which would ask the judge to exclude certain evidence to the extent that we determine that it's not, that it would be either prejudicial or not helpful to the jury.
Okay, I'm going to shut off debate.
Just point, does the motion include 2.8 million?
The motion is to a favorable recommendation to fund 2.8 million. The source of funding will be dealt with
No,
separately.
I hadn't heard the 2.8.
2.8 million, for anyone that was unclear, is the number. David?
I'm going to abstain.
Source of funding, Andy?
The funding,
Stabilization.
The funding has been proposed to be stabilization, but we're going to vote on that in connection with the budget. So we're going to take this in two steps. Go ahead.
Why are we taking it in 2 steps? Why are they not
Well, people could
tied together?
I'm sorry, just to clarify.
Well, if people believe 2.8, hold on, Jerry, you've asked the question, let me answer the question. If people determine that 2.8 million is a reasonable expenditure to resolve this issue, then we're going to spend the money. Then the only second question is where the money comes from. But where the money comes from, unless somebody convinces me I'm wrong, does not determine whether or not we authorize the expenditure of the funds. Does anybody disagree with me?
That's what I was going to ask. Is there going to be a vote on the funding?
We will do that in connection with the budget.
Okay, fine.
Okay. Can we go back
It's
to
not a budget issue, though.
Jerry? I'm overruling you, Jerry. I'm overruling you. We're voting. David is abstaining.
Yes.
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 Yes. Lauren?
Yep.
Jerry?
I'm going to abstain.
Okay, so that's unanimous with 2 abstentions favorable on Article 16. Thank you, Chris.
Thank you all for having me.
Thank you.
Is David Condrey here? Why don't you come?
He's in the back.
Why don't you come visit us?
Huh? Get up.
Just don't ask about watering, please.
You know, I have a pool. We're going to have to talk about that later. Okay, folks, this is Article 11. First of all, for the record, you are?
David Condrey, General Manager of Milford Water Department.
Okay, thank you. Article 11L.
What article is it? 11? Thank you. Thank you.
This is a $4 million appropriation in connection with the Godfrey Brook Treatment Plan. Why don't you give us a 90-second summary, David, of what's happening here?
Yeah, so we've been dealing with PFAS, or what is commonly known as forever chemicals, out at Godfrey Brook. And we were in the process of having engineering done so that we could put some optimized treatment at the plant. During last year, the February timeframe, we decided to shut the plant off because the levels of PFAS started to climb up. The issue, like I said, had been going even since we started the plant. construction, so we designed it in expectation of the infrastructure anyways, that we would have to eventually install some filters for the removal of the PFAS. The reason it didn't get done in the forefront is because EPA, DEP had not come up with where their numbers were going to fall, and the last thing we wanted to do was spend money on treatment that wasn't going to work for the removal. Again, this whole article is basically centered around the funding for that. We did initially appropriate $250,000 from our bond premiums, I believe it was initially. That got us the ball rolling for doing the engineering. Since then, we actually were awarded $1 million grant that is being used currently to offset more of the engineering piloting, which is a study that has to be done to prove out different techniques of removal. So we have that, and just recently we got put on the state revolving fund list for funding, which is a low-interest loan, if you will, through the state to fund the project. But part of the steps in getting that funding is that there has to be a vote authorizing the full cost of the project, which is what that is.
Okay, and so the water company, I think we previously authorized you to establish retained earnings, if I'm remembering that correctly, but the retained earnings are not sufficient to fund this, so we're going to bond this? Is that what's happening?
Yeah, and also keep in mind, I mean, if we're going back in memory lane here, this is kind of going like perfectly to plan. So when it was a privately held company, it was very difficult to get any attention of the state revolving fund, also AKA the Clean Water Trust. So as a publicly owned entity, that was more highly available. So we do, when we had the ARPA money, we were going to go through all the capital projects. At the completion of that, our next step was to be hopeful that we would be approved by the state revolving fund, and here we are right now. So I think our real hope was it was going to be like a grant, but it's a low interest loan, 1% and 2%.
Okay, for the full amount?
For the full amount.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
David, when you put the article in, it was $4 million. Subsequent to that, we got $1 million grant. Does that reduce the $4 million?
At the end of the day, that will come off the top.
And recall, when you have to do these, you have to vote for authorization to borrow the entire.
We've
done it routinely, but we don't actually execute on that, but we do have.
But the target, if all goes well, is now $3 million.
Right. And there is some loan forgiveness in there because disadvantaged
There'll be
communities.
some tweaks, but, okay.
And this is an enterprise fund, as people recall, so this
This is
is,
only for the ratepayers.
The ratepayers, yes.
it's not a general obligation of the town.
I mean, people who don't use Milford Water don't get billed.
That's correct.
Does anyone have any questions for David?
I have a question, but I'll wait till after the vote, because it's really unrelated to the
Okay.
article.
Can I water my flowers?
No, it's not that.
So can I have a motion?
So moved.
Motion by Al to favorable recommendation.
Second.
Second by Nick. Roll call.
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yes.
Lauren.
Yes.
Jerry. Okay, Article 11 is unanimous. Did you have a question?
Quick
for David?
question. At what point, Dave, does the Godfrey Brook become the Charles River or vice versa? I understand, I think, when we closed the bridge on Beach Street,
Yep.
that was referred to as the Charles River.
Yes.
But isn't that the same body of water that flows down almost along Depot Street and eventually to the sewage treatment plant, which is the Charles River?
Right. So you have Godfrey Brook Wellfield. Charles River runs behind it, let's say.
So it's two bodies of water.
And then there's also Godfrey, what is called Godfrey Brook, which from my understanding runs from up by Congress Street
Right,
all the
comes
way
out.
down through town. So you actually have the Godfrey Brook that runs right through the middle of the well field, hence the name.
Okay, good. Thank you.
Yep.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
You're welcome. Thank you for coming in.
No problem.
He brought Jonathan just for extra weight.
Do we
Muscle, extra muscle.
do we want to do Article 17?
Yeah, whatever you guys want to do.
Yeah, sure, come on. Okay, for the record, you are.
Hi, Robbie Tassino, Chief of Police. Good evening.
Okay, so this is Article 17, a request for funding for tasers. Would you like to give us a 60-second summary?
I'll try to give you in less than 60 seconds.
How much money is it? Excuse me, how much money is it?
Al, do you have that number?
84.
84,000?
84.
Thank you.
So everybody, I think, knows what the tasers are. The taser is a non-lethal impact device that delivers electricity to incapacitate somebody. And, the taser program, certainly in Milford, has saved more lives than, we've stopped counting. What do I mean by that? People have been tasered that haven't been shot. It's that simple. On more than one occasion. Myself personally tasered, and I'm being vague for a reason, tasered an individual with a knife that was going to stab children. This person was tasered, taken into custody, and got the mental health that this person needed. So that was a person that, thankfully we didn't have to use lethal force. The issue with taser is every so many years the current tasers have to be replaced. With that, the warranty and the guarantee are replaced, okay? So after July 1, the current tasers that we have are no longer guaranteed by Taser. What does that mean? They're no longer going to send their legal department to Milford when someone gets tased and brings a litigation against Taser, the use of Taser. Taser does that across the country. Taser stands by their product, their research, their data, the training, and replacement, and everything that goes along with putting something like that out in the hands of police officers. So this, and I know Al loves the word capital planning, working with Zach, this bill is actually closer to $600,000. And we're one of the few municipalities that still, and I know Zach's amazed, we get to work on a payment plan with Taser, where we break it up over this many years. So every year you'd have to come before you get an article for another $84,000. But Zach and I think that's fiscally prudent, and it's the best way to go at this. So it is fiscal responsibility, capital planning. It's pushed out over 5 years, and the portion that we need to pay after July 1st is $84,000. That's going to give us everything up front. They're going to fund us for the remaining, what would it be, $400,000. They're going to basically just let us pay that off as a non-interest loan, if you will.
$84,000 a year, so these tasers are good for 5 years, if I'm doing the math?
yeah.
Okay. Al?
So this is $600,000 commitment.
Correct. Well, no, it's an $84,000 commitment. If I don't pay for them in a year, they're gonna. If I don't give them another $84,000 next year, they're going to come and take
July
it.
2nd, we can't say, never mind.
Right, exactly, yeah.
So realistically, we're committing to 600 grand.
Stretched out over 5 years.
Whatever it's 600.
But we have tasers now, so
Right.
these are replacements.
Right, you have tasers now that are going to fall out of warranty.
So this is not like a new,
No. This has been planned.
Yeah.
We've had this on capital, but I want people to understand,
And it's-
this is like the computers when we did a 3-year lease at the high school.
Right.
It was only 100 grand the first year, but you're committing to 5 years, you're committing to 600,000.
Michael?
The article uses the word upgrading. Sounds to me like we're really talking just routine replacement.
Sorry, I don't agree.
What?
Sorry.
So the current tasers we have, they're no longer going to be manufactured after July 1st. So it would be an upgrade, but the ones we have aren't going to be in service anymore after July 1st. It's the replacement taser, so we use the word upgrade.
Okay.
Yes, Bob?
How many tasers are we purchasing, Chief?
Close to 60. So we have 53 people, and you have to have, and again, we adjust this number as a matter of affordability of what we have at the station, because if somebody goes out and, the taser breaks, We send that off to get fixed at no charge.
And that was my next question.
Yeah.
Does this cover warranties?
Yes.
It isn't just the physical cost
No.
of the taser itself?
No.
What else is included in that cost?
The training for the instructors, because our defensive tactics training, Milford's one of the few agencies that has actual certified defensive tactics instructors on the department. I've spent that money, sent them to these schools to try to mitigate our liability when it comes to defensive tactics. So TASER would have this group of individuals come out to where they're hosting and train them, and that's all part of that, and this next level TASER, and it recertifies them. This is kind of a revolving door.
Do you have to be in law enforcement to have a taser? or-
Have this TASER, you do, yeah.
Have this taser? I was thinking like if the chairman has a taser and zaps one of us.
He has a
get
taser.
online.
I think he wants a TASER.
That's what I'm saying.
Any other relevant questions?
That's a lot of money. A lot of money.
Motion to approve the article.
Motion by Michael to approve it,
I'll second it.
seconded by David. Roll call.
Yes.
Yeah.
Say it wrong, yeah.
Yes.
Lauren?
Yep.
Jerry?
Yes.
Okay, Article 17 is unanimous. Thank you.
Thank you, good night.
Okay, let's do Article 8. Kristen, are you still with us?
I am.
Okay, would you like to give a 60-second summary of what this is about? This is Article 8.
I would love to. Yes. Article 8 is broken down into 4 parts. Essentially, what we've done is we've tried to rework a couple of sections. 5.8A was to simplify administratively how we handle new hires and their vacations. We had, if you see the old personnel bylaws, kind of a clunky big chart. We did away with that. It's the 2 paragraphs that you see before you. It basically says if you're hired earlier in the year or later in the year, what the rules are for when you get your vacation. It's still the 2 weeks. Nothing's changed. Has really no financial impact. It's really to make life easier for us to keep track of this stuff. 5.8B speeds up the extra week, so for somebody moving through the process through the years, they would go to 3 years of vacation instead of at 5 years at 3 years. And to get the next upgrade in the vacation, you would go from 10 years down to 7 years. The 15 years it stays the same. So this is essentially it helps us with recruitment and retention. There's no financial impact. We're not paying any premiums for something like this. It's attractive to new hires. It's attractive to keep people. We're not leaping from 0 to 3 weeks. After 3 years, we're going from 2 weeks to 3 weeks. So you're adding 5 days. We find most folks don't take whole weeks at a time anyway. So we're not ever hiring out anybody to replace these people, so there's no cost to that. But it is nice for the work-life balance, and that's become a very popular thing to talk about, and it's actually not just the younger generation, it's everybody likes to have that. It's a good thing, and it helps us. And, it's always better to be, more desirable for either the next town or if you're competing with the private sector. The next section was 5.9. That relates to overtime. That affects a handful of individuals, approximately 4 individuals, going from 1.5 times their rate of pay in overtime to 2.0. So it's an increase in only a half amount of time. It affects Sundays and holidays, and it's the folks that probably are on the lower end of the pay scale. Anyway, the few that it affects. It also puts us into line equity-wise with the union employees who already get this, so that evens things out. The last part is 5.12, which is strictly a clarification. We added a couple of words. We want to make it clear that the extra day that a person could earn by not taking extra sick time would be in a calendar year. So it's a clarification.
Anything else you want to add, Kristen?
I don't think so unless there's questions or.
Thank you. Before I started talking, I just want to make sure you had, so, and thank you for coming in, Kristen. And Kristen and I did talk, excuse me, guys. Thank you. Okay, so here's my issue and concern. Collectively on the Finance Committee, we probably got about 300 years of private sector experience.
Leave me out of it, will you?
That's just Bobby.
You know, and people talk to me from time to time, and, you know, we've got contracts where people are now routinely getting 5-6% pay bumps, and people on the Finance Committee in the private sector will tell you that what their personal experience is, if people are getting half of that in the private sector these days, they consider themselves lucky. We have a pension plan that is a defined benefit pension plan, which means that people get a specific amount of their salary. It's often a substantial portion of their highest salary. And anybody that's been in the private sector knows that those benefits have largely gone the way of the dodo bird. Most major private employers have eliminated defined benefit pension plans probably 30 years ago. So now the typical pension plan is the 401k, where you make contributions. Your contributions plus your earnings is what you get. So that is a huge benefit that people in town government have. As a matter of fact, a lot of people in state government and nonprofits, in addition to private sector, don't have that. Retiree health insurance is reimbursed in substantial part by the town, another benefit that has largely gone the way of the dodo bird in the private sector. 4 or 5 years ago, we approved substantial compensation increases with a pay scale for the general government. That was based on comparables of various municipal communities that, frankly, I had a few issues with, but I wasn't the Finance Committee chair at the time, so I'll put that aside. And now we have another improvement in benefits. My concerns are a few. Number one, I seriously question whether these are always no employee change effects, because 2 years from now, we may be getting another article saying, well, it's not going to be 5 sick days anymore. It's going to be 10, or it's going to be 15. But it's just sick time, so don't worry about it. And obviously, the aggregate effect of all of those kinds of things is you're getting less work out of people. You're increasing the risk that you will need some people, and then somebody's going to be coming to us at some point down the road saying, wow, we really need an extra person now in Department X or Department Y. And lastly, my concern is what I would refer to as the daisy chain effect. Anything that gets approved in here, anything that is not already available for other departments, you can bet that the time will come that they're going to say, well, these people got it, and the next contract, this needs to be added, and then they do it in their contracts, and then it's coming over here, and we've got a daisy chain. We're in very strenuous financial conditions right now. A lot of department heads know what we had to go through this year. Regardless of whether it is an immediate, direct, quantifiable financial impact, I don't see how it's prudent to be expanding pay and benefits. And if the state aid continues to go in the direction it's going to go, we may be talking about going in the other direction in pay and benefits. So I'm struggling with the justification for this under the circumstances. That is just my view. I'm going to open this up to the rest of the group. Michael.
A question for Kristen. Could you give us some idea what the turnover rate is for Milford employees subject to the personnel bylaws compared to adjacent and nearby communities?
This is anecdotal based on what I am hearing through, the MMHRA, so that's the group that I belong to. Most of what I hear is the struggle to recruit people. It's not so much, so you don't have a lot of turnover up on the high end, you have your retirements. On the lower end, if you can get people to stay, after that second or third year, you're lucky. That's where your turnover hits, which is why and the committee supports, trying to entice people a little bit more with an acceleration on the vacation. So I don't have a percentage for you, but I can tell you that that's the area where you get them falling off. So if you looked at the age brackets in the town, you'd see a heavy concentration toward the retirement end and a harder time getting even younger people to apply. I see all of the resumes that come in, and it's not all young people. You can't sell that pension anymore. I don't care what anybody says, because I'm seeing it all the time. I think it's great. And on paper it is, but these younger generations look at anything after 3 years and like you have 17 heads. I got to stay 30 years in one place. I know it's valuable, but it's hard to get them to do that. So you end up with the turnover at that end, and we don't get. No matter what you say about the economy, we still have 4.3, 4.4, 4.5% unemployment. You don't get a lot of really great resumes. So it's a struggle to hire. And we have Brian Long, who's our chairperson, who couldn't be here tonight, is a recruiter, and he knows all about that. And Jody Nasiglia, who works at MIT, we all have having the same experiences, and I'm seeing it across that spectrum of the folks that I work with. So recruitment is difficult, turnover is there at the younger end, and so we don't have all the answers here, but I can't say we're going to put in a daycare. I can't say everybody can work remote. I can't talk about loan forgiveness or anything like that. That is more immediate money. I understand the chair's concerns. It's more of an extrapolation. It's not more of an instant cost. But, anytime we think we can be better than somebody and try to fix that or make it better, it's helpful.
And Kristen and I talked about this earlier, and I question whether the municipalities are casting a wide enough net, because I know some young people that would frankly work for the town but couldn't find openings that were suitable for them. So I don't know if people are aware of these opportunities. If you're talking about something that's really unique, like a sewer director, no question about it, right? That's a specialized skill. But for a lot of these positions, it seems, especially kids that don't have degrees that are providing immediate high-paying salaries, I would think that these opportunities would be very attractive. I'm sorry, Al, go ahead.
Kristen, you said something that I'd never heard before, but if a pension plan is not attracting new employees and they don't value it, should we start considering going to a 401k plan in the future? Grandfathering in our employees.
You have to lobby the state for that.
I think it's a state law, but that's exactly what the big private companies did. They grandfathered in the older the crowd, and then the younger crowd was converted.
Social Security. So that's
tier two.
Because there's no Social Security.
Right. Al, Bobby.
Yeah. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just a question to you. Who's our representative on the Finance Committee to the Personnel Board?
Is that general government?
General government.
That would be Mr. Hyatt.
Be Jerry. Jerry, Bob DeVita, have you had an opportunity to discuss this with the Personnel Board as the representative of the subcommittee?
He may have temporarily departed, given the audio and the video. So.
And Kristen, a question for you, please. You talked about attracting people and keeping people. And I don't ask you to give me the exact number, but in the past 3 years, how many people who work for the town have left employment in the town of Milford to seek employment elsewhere in the private sector, so to speak?
Well, I kind of cut this off between the town and the school because even though we do the benefits for both, we only do the hiring part on the town side. So there's about 700 on the school side. There's about 300 on the town side. So I can't speak to their turnover, although I do see it. I don't keep track of it as much. You mean talking about percentage or a number of individuals?
Total numbers, whatever you have. And I'm not asking for the exact number, I'm not going to take a truth in lending,
Yeah.
but you said it is a problem to maintain people. How many have actually left work, again, to pursue careers in the private sector? If you know, and if you
Well,
know, that's
because we
fine,
have
too.
300.
Three?
Well, we don't lose a lot of police officers, and we don't lose a lot of firefighters. They mostly go through retirement, which is good, and that's 1/3 of what's in the town. So out of the rest of them, I'm going to say we probably only lose about, I don't know, maybe 25 or 30. For various reasons. They go to other towns or they go to private sector or something, and it tends to be the jobs that you would see more of a turnstile with. Obviously we don't see a lot of department heads leaving, that kind of thing. But we do have a lot fewer folks on the town side than we do on the school side.
Thank you. No, Mr. Chairman, I would just offer this. It seems to me an extremely liberal request here in Article 8. I mean, I look at 3 years of net credited service and you get 3 weeks vacation. There's not too many in the private sector that are getting that. But be that as it may, I would like to see, and if it's available, how do we look compared to other towns? Are other towns giving this type of vacation benefits? And, at this point, I'm kind of leaning towards unfavorable until we actually take a look at this, because you're absolutely right. I heard the term, there's no financial impact. When people go on vacation for 3, 4, and 5 weeks, many times, people have to work overtime to fill that vacancy. So there is a financial impact. So at this point, I'm leaning towards unfavorable. I'd like to see more study done on it, plain and simple. Thank you.
Further discussion?
I just have a thought about the part about double time on Sundays and holidays. And I mean, if I was an employee, I would love it. When I was in high school, and I don't want to date myself, but in the 80s, I got double time on Sundays working retail, and I thought it was great. But that's not required anymore. I don't know a lot of people going to church on Sundays anymore. I mean, maybe I'm the outlier there, but that one seems like, wow. I mean, it's a very attractive thing for a potential employee, but it seems like now is not the best year. So I kind of agree with Bob that more study comparisons with other towns should take place, or maybe move to pass it over to a more favorable financial year.
Actually, so this only affects about 4 individuals who are already getting 1.5 times. It only affects Sundays and holidays when they're shoveling snow. It doesn't happen every year. I can't speak for Zach, but I think that he would agree that the financial impact is minimal for something like this, and it does bring them in line with the rest of the employees that are already getting this benefit. If we're going to, talk about that one in particular.
But they're union employees, all right, Chris? The other people?
Zach, are any of the non-unions getting the double time, or is it just the unions?
Just the union.
Just the unions.
Just the unions. Okay, so we have,
Just the union.
the custodians.
And does every single union get the vacation benefit schedule that you've proposed here?
It varies, depends on the union you're talking about, and also it's a little apples and oranges because the fire department has very different schedules, as do the police, and they're the 2 biggest unions we have on the town side, so it's kind of hard to compare them that way. With the Mace Union, they line up with us right now. All the contracts were just done, so they're set for the next 3 years.
I mean, I agree with Bob. I'd like to see names, dollar amounts, positions of people who've left, where they've gone.
Other towns for comparison?
Other towns for comparison, although I want to see the towns.
Well, yes, yeah.
To make sure it's a true comparison. Yes. I thought you were going to say something, Bill. No.
So are we talking about breaking this down into the 4 different components, or are you talking about all 4 at once?
Well, for the moment, Nick had a question, so let me talk to him.
Yeah, I'd like to understand how we ended up with these proposals. Retention, the issues that you're describing are very common across all industries right now. It's hard to retain, hard to recruit. Compensation is definitely one of the tools to use, but it's usually a race, and you end up paying more constantly. So I just want to understand how we ended up with these proposals specifically as a solve for the issues.
Well, when the personnel board meets, individuals can bring forward either I won't call them complaints, concerns, or it's our job to look at each one of these personnel bylaws and make sure that we're current, that, nothing's gone stale, or that we've kept up with regulations or laws. That's always a big one. And sometimes we have individuals who have unique circumstances. So, for example, we had somebody who went from part-time to full-time benefit eligible, but they only work like 28 hours. So we had to look at the bylaw that the language did not include someone who worked those in-between hours. And so we ended up tweaking the language to make sure that her benefits were prorated. So things come up periodically like that. These came up, I think, organically. I know that we've been looking, when we meet, this has been going on for at least 2 years, at the 5.8A, where this big chart that you see in the current personnel bylaws was just very clunky, and it was very hard to maintain. It's harder to keep track of what's happening to the new hires as they're turning over to the new benefit year. So they said, can we make this simpler? So we went through several iterations. We came up with what you see before you, which doesn't increase anything. It just makes it simpler to keep track of. So, that's one part. So then the other part was, we had a discussion about, turnover, or what are we doing about new benefits? Do we have any? Typically, when we have new benefits, they are supported only by the employees, so they're the optional things, and they have to pay for them 100%. This came up because we thought, you hear this every day when you're in the business. You talk to the people, you read articles, you have professional publications, and you see which way things are going. It's not unheard of to accelerate the vacation. I understand that you can sit here all night and talk about different sectors of the economy and industry and everything else. So most people, so I did the percentage, 52% of our staff is past this 3-5 thing. They already have the maximum amount of vacation, or they're already past the accelerated part. So it doesn't affect them at all. They're already there. This is to keep people, or to attract people on the lower end. Like I said, you're not going from 0 weeks to 3 weeks at that third year. You're just adding 5 days. A lot of people, all they're going to do is take an extra long weekend. You're going to have to be there 7 years in order to get that other 5 days. So we went through this thing kind of methodically to say, what can we do to make it better? Because that's what human resources does in part. We try to worry about retention and getting the best people and everything. It's really expensive, and it's very time consuming when you have that turnover, especially at the higher levels. When we hire department heads, and Rick will tell you this, you can't hire somebody in a department head level and give them 2 weeks vacation. They're not coming. You have to realize that they've already got 10 years at least of experience, probably more than that, and they're giving up 3, 4, or 5 weeks vacation. You got to start them higher. So that's why there's that clause in there that says that it's up to the discretion on those types of jobs. As far as the overtime, like I said, Zach would know the numbers better than me, but last year, I don't know if we had anybody that shoveled snow, because we didn't have much snow, so it was probably very, very minimal in cost. Maybe we kept the custodians on a couple of days this time. But again, you're not going from 0 to 2 times on a Sunday, and it's only that day of the week. You're going from 1.5 to 2. So it's not a real big chunk of change for that. And, the lower end employees, they're always the ones that it's easiest to kick out, but I think equity-wise, it makes sense. And that's something we're always looking for, too. 5.12 is just a clarification. There's no money attached to that. We wanted to make sure that people didn't misunderstand it and try to take advantage of it too early. So that's why I wanted to break it down. But that's how these things come up. We talk about what's been brought to us or if something specific has come up.
Thank you.
The question's been asked, I know a couple of people have asked for more data, Kristen. I don't know, do you have any authority to pass this over for May or no?
Oh, that would be the personnel board. Brian would have to weigh in on that.
Okay, so.
But I can tell them.
They don't have authority, so we may have to vote, Bob, and then.
Well, I would make a motion that we vote unfavorable on this article, with the caveat that we solicit in the event that the Personnel Board decides to pass over, pending further study and analysis. But at the present moment, I'm going to make a motion for an unfavorable recommendation.
I'll second that motion.
Okay, there's a motion by Bob for an unfavorable, a second by Michael. Let's do a roll call. So a yes vote is to support the unfavorable request.
Yes.
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 Lauren?
Yes.
Jerry? So that's a unanimous unfavorable with an abstention. Kristen, if you could please pass along our request to Brian to see if he'd be willing to pass this over. And if someone could get back to me, I would appreciate it. Thank you for joining us.
Of course. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, I think everything else is you, Zach, right?
Yes.
Okay.
You know, it's like a prize fight. They put a guy in to weigh you out. Okay? Then they bring in the ringer. And there's no fight left.
Well, one down.
Everybody's good then?
What is the municipal version of a 401K?
The pension.
No, I mean,
Oh, 457 plan.
457.
We offer that too.
457.
Yeah,
Do they match?
no match.
No match.
No, fully funded yourself. Yeah, just deferred comp.
Okay, so we've got Articles 4, 7, 20, and 21. 4 is, I think, should be last.
Yeah.
Let me ask you about 7. Can we go to 7? So 7 is funding for outside labor council, and we're all just trying to get our arms around this.
Yeah, sure.
What are we hiring outside labor council for, besides what we heard?
It's actually not for that at all.
It's not for that at all.
So this is, I'll start off saying this is not a revolving fund because it's not an authorized statutory avenue to do so, but it is very much recurring. So this will be the 4th time, I believe, that we appropriated this same amount of money. This is for representation for the unions that represent the town. So it's union negotiators. That's no longer being done in town council's office. We've been doing it for 4 or 5 years now. All things union related, negotiations, disciplinary action, and everything that comes with it. So this is simply a replenishment of that account.
So let me stop you there, because I thought Jerry was doing a lot of the union stuff. Has our in-house legal budget gone down because we're moving?
Yes.
It has?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
I don't know if people remember that. I'm not remembering.
Jerry continues to do the school. So what I just
The
said is
school
everything.
union.
Yes.
Everything but the union, about the school?
Yes.
I see, okay.
Mr. Chairman, what union contracts do we have this year?
Outstanding right now, they've all been settled.
So we're funding...
The next one that'll come up is the Highway Department, which will be next year. But again, it's not just negotiations, it's representation for all legal matters associated with the unions.
Grievance hearing,
Grievances.
mediation, arbitration.
Oh, okay, because I was going to say, if we're hiring them to negotiate and there's nothing to negotiate...
Just sitting around, I know where you go.
What would you say the average cost is if you blended it over a few years? The average cost per year?
So there's probably a reason you haven't remembered, because we haven't done this in like 3 years, so probably 50K.
So 50K on an average annually?
Yeah, give or
And
take.
this is
Obviously, different things
150,000.
happen, yeah.
Okay, all right, this is starting to make more sense to me now. I had a question about source of funding. I don't know if now's the right time. How do you decide what's coming out of raise and appropriate versus free cash?
It's really just to meet our overall goals and objectives, you know?
Okay. Nothing.
Early on at this town meeting, I try to do as much as possible out of free cash to free up, raise and appropriate, and we deal with that in October. However, given this year, we were pretty tight on free cash, hence having a couple items that are going to need to be out of raise and appropriate in order to hit our overall goal.
Got it. Okay.
Motion favorable.
Motion
Article
favorable by
7.
Michael, seconded by Bob. Roll call.
Yes.
Yes.
Yep.
Yes.
Lauren.
Yes.
Jerry, unanimous with Jerry abstaining. So that's Article 7. Do you want to do 20 and 21 now?
Yeah, I'll have Tom present 20. He did a lot of work on here. You can see the list is pretty large. I hope you're happy with this turn back here, but go ahead.
So as we know.
You told us 582 minimum, Tom. I was hoping for a little more.
One or two things, we had a lot of discussions this week with some department heads, so aside from that, we settled on 621,000. Now, if you noticed, the second two at the top, Al brought it to my attention, there is a grammatical error. Vernon Grove Article 20, from the 10/20/21 special town meeting, the next article also has the same date and same time, but Vernon Grove, the first one, is actually from the 10/20/24 town meeting. That's the only grammatical error.
The one thing that jumped out at me just looking at this from 5,000 feet is that I thought we had some meaningful school articles that Bill had talked about a few months back. Are they not here?
I actually, oh, sorry. Sorry, Bill. I actually had a specific conversation with Wen about that.
Okay.
And we went through each article,
Okay.
and she assured me that a couple of these projects still aren't complete yet.
Okay.
But will definitely be completed by next time around.
So maybe we'll get another few $100 grand next
Maybe.
There are
spring.
5
But you do see them here.
There are 5 school articles.
Pulling back
But we
50
had
grand.
300 to 500 grand in schools, as I recall, from 3 or 4 months ago.
Yeah.
Correct me if I'm
Yes,
wrong.
no,
And they were old articles.
Yes, a number of encumbrances were still against those accounts. So
What
yes,
does that mean?
basically, we haven't paid yet, but we've incurred, like maybe the job hasn't been completed,
Okay.
spoken for.
Yeah.
But you did pull back 50 grand from the school.
More, yeah, about 50 grand, yeah.
So I'm sorry, Tom, I interrupted you.
Yeah, so, and again, we went through extensively with all the department heads, and if you just go down the list and look at the specific articles and the reasons for them, many of these projects are completed. If you notice, and Al brought another one to my attention that may help you understand, if you notice some of the articles, actually have 2 articles associated with it. And the reason for that is we have a first article that gets funded. Now, we may find that there's another purpose we can use that article for. An example, town hall carpeting, that article states other buildings. So the police department was able to repurpose some of the article that we had for town hall to there. So that's when we say we either replenish an article that's been fully absorbed and we need to replenish it, or repurpose it for another reason within the constraints of that article.
But it has to be within the wording of the article.
Constraints of the article,
The
yeah.
idea if we got money for A and we're going to spend it on B is gone.
And the way it was written, you could use it
Yeah.
for that C project. So that's why you see, in a couple of cases, you had 2 articles supporting the same monies.
Or in
and
addition,
region.
as we know, we've had a number of times where we had to appropriate further funding, so that was 2, sometimes 3 articles, as we've seen with the Parks Department.
Chairman?
Yes, sir.
I make a motion for favorable recommendation on Article 20.
So Bob has made a motion for favorable recommendation on Article 20.
Second.
Second. Are there any further questions or discussion? No. Roll call.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yes.
Lauren.
Yes.
Jerry. Okay, unanimous with an abstention by Jerry for favorable on Article 20.
I did want to briefly bring to your attention that there was a large article that we were trying to get closed, which is the Central Street Bridge, but there's a retainage amount still held outstanding right now. We didn't want to rush him, but it's large enough where I totally think we should consider, as Tom was mentioning earlier, a repurpose of that article come October. So we're talking $500,000. So
A repurpose?
you could use it as a funding source, in other words.
Okay.
Just keep that in mind. By October, it should definitely be complete.
So we'll have one of these for October for that article.
Or just that'll be an identified funding source.
Okay. But don't you have to do something to it to take it
It would all
out?
happen in one
It
article.
all happen in
if
one
we do
article.
that.
Okay.
You'd have to spend it on the bridge. It was
No,
allocated.
we will repurpose the remaining balance. We can, I'm not saying we need to, I'm saying
we'll
it's
talk.
an available funding source.
We'll talk afterwards.
Okay. I just don't want to go backwards to playing fast and loose with,
No, it would be an article, town meeting with a.
Then I feel comfortable.
repurpose. Yes.
Okay, understood.
we on 21 yet?
21 is next.
21, this is also, as I'll call it, a recurring article. It's transfers between the lines, which is last year's budget.
So this is between and amongst salary and personal expense and things like that?
Correct,
And you
correct.
you circulated something on this. This was part of the package that Leanne, I believe, sent to folks either yet.
Article, it's 144,000.
144,000.
On the back page of the, the back of the,
Our motion favorable recommendation on Article 21.
Okay, so as David and Bob just pointed out, this is the flip side of the Article 20 document. This is a transfer of funds, which is previously circulated, which totals $144,000. This is not a net spend, this is just a reallocation. I'm sorry, motion by Bob?
Favorable, yes.
Favorable.
I have a question.
Second by David. Al, go ahead.
Brownie, on 610 Library, we're increasing the salary and wages account by $5,000.
That's in anticipation of the replacement for the library director because they anticipate additional costs in obtaining a new employee. And you're on that stand.
Yeah, but that's for this year then, not for the budget.
Yeah, you're right for next year, but for this transfer here, what actually happened, if you recall, that was one that had a contract settlement, and we only funded $5,000. We thought we had it, and the reason we did that, actually, and you'll know this, is that when you increase your salaries, even though it's a contract negotiation settlement, that it affects the MARs, right? Which is that kind of silly thing that forces your budget increase. So we were trying to be really tight with that. We were too tight with it, put it that way.
Affects the Mars.
It's a calculation where you have to increase your minimum spending in order to get your state aid.
Oh, I see.
Remember on the cherry sheet, one of the offsets is library.
I see.
So if you don't increase a certain amount, you don't get that. You know? So it kind of handcuffs you to continue to fund library.
I see.
I'm sorry.
Okay, that answers it.
Okay, no, I'm glad you asked the question. So we had a motion and a second.
Yes.
David?
Yes. Yeah.
Yes.
Yes.
Lauren?
Yes.
Jerry? Unanimous with a Jerry abstention.
Still got 9 and 10?
No.
Just four.
The only thing that should be left is 4.
Yep.
Did we do 9 and 10?
Don't confuse me, Al. We must have done 9 and 10 previously because
Okay.
one of them marked off. Yeah, 9 is favorable and 10 is RTS.
Okay.
Okay, so now we're just down to 4. So let's see. Should we look at the balance sheet for a sec?
Yes.
Yeah, I would look at the balance sheet, and then I'm curious, I think I read that you distributed the last changes since it's been presented, but I'm not certain if you had, or if you want me to go over that.
You're talking about the 2-page sheet?
Well, if we're talking Article 4 right now, which is the budget, since the last time it's been presented, we've had a change with the school, and we're looking to fund the fire a little bit.
All right, so
If you want me to go through that?
there's a few different things we've been talking about, so let's make sure we're all talking about the same thing. Number one is what we call the balance sheet, which is really the P&L, right? The second thing is the two-page document that Paul was keeping track of during budget season that listed the 60 accounts, and it showed our running table with the net positive or negative. If you have that, Paul?
It's on the backside of that P&L.
I think it's on the back.
Not the backside of it, it's the attachment to it. We've got the two-page sheet, we've got all the budget counts.
I thought it was in a separate, it's on Article 4.
Right there in the back.
Okay, I don't know why I didn't have this, but okay. So, yeah, but this has the 138. This is not updated.
Yes, it is.
The 138 is the number.
Yes, sir.
That's the number from our original projection.
It's the number for our original, all right,
And all
let's-
the budget totals are the correct number.
okay, so,
State aid changed, and that changed the bottom.
all right, so, hold on. Let me try to give people a 2-minute update, and then Zach, you can supplement. At each budget meeting, Paul has been circulating this 2-page document that lists the historical spending, the projected 27, the actual submitted, and the submitteds were updated for actual as we went. We added an over-under projected column this year so that people understand the impact of the changes as we go, because in the past we were kind of just operating in the abstract. So that gave us a running tally of where we were, positive or negative, as compared to our overall objective. And when I say objective, that's indicated by all the items at the very bottom of the second page. The objective for stabilization, for the excess levy capacity, for capital, et cetera. Now, there are a few changes since the last meeting. The school department came in at the last meeting. They gave us a handout, which was $81,513,000. Now, this gets slightly confusing because Paul's chart had them in at $81,488, so there was a differential of about 25 grand. Apparently, they must have tweaked something before they actually came to us. Zach and I had discussions with the school folks after that meeting, and we got them to agree to a further downward adjustment, which was $75,000 off of the number that Paul was carrying, $100,000 off of the number that they had come to our meeting with. Now, there were a couple of other things. There was some concern about what was done with the fire department budget, so there was $50,000 that we were able to wrangle from the highway department because they had some decent federal funding for roads and bridges. So we suggest that that money get allocated from parks over to fire to try to mitigate some of the things that have happened in the fire budget. So when all is said and done, what Paul's sheet tells us is that we're $138,000 short of our goals and objectives. However, since then, there has been the House budget, which has come out for state aid, which, as I understand it, was like $300,000-ish better than the governor's budget. There was some sort of compromise done when Zach and Paul were doing the math, thinking that maybe we'll end up getting the benefit of about half or a third of that, right? And so that's why when you get to the balance sheet, the so-called balance sheet, the shortfall goes from 138,000 down to 14,000. Again, this is, we're not going to know perfectly until all the numbers shake out, but at present, we're showing a deficit of about 14,000 with an excess levy capacity of $5.5 million, with the capital project of $1.7 million, and with a stabilization number of about $1.7 million, which is a few $100,000 down from last year, but still a contribution. Footnote, the litigation settlement we could talk about separately. Do you agree with everything I've said so far, Zach?
Yes.
Okay. So Does it make sense for you to walk us through this sheet?
Yes.
Okay, so now this is the source of funding sheet that Zach supplied in the last couple of days, which goes through the various articles that require money and identifies the source of funding for each. I want to turn it over to you now, Zach.
Thank you. So first, I want to point out, when we're looking at the balance sheet, AKA the P&L, we are not including other funding sources besides the enterprise fund, sewer and water, and raise and appropriate. So that's important to note when we're going on to this funding schedule, because we do have a balance of free cash. And actually, this is a quite busy example of various funding sources, certainly for this time of year, and certainly for not a lot of monetary articles here. So I'll walk you through it. So that really on the top part is going over the budget, which, as you can see from the balance sheet, is the exact ticked and tied number, $166,711,157. That's made up primarily of raise and appropriate at $153 million, but there's two enterprise funds, which is of their own user fees at $13.5 million, we'll call it. So again, right now, we have available free cash of $931,000. Of that free cash, the vast majority of it will be eaten up by the snow and ice deficit, which is $860K. It's important that we clear it now, because otherwise it gets kind of jammed down your throat and has to be mandatory raised on the tax recap. So that's always a goal and objective that we have, freeing that up. Therefore, when we get to October, that's not hanging over us. So that's eating up the vast majority. As I mentioned earlier, typically I would try to fund all monetary articles right now through free cash, because we do try to kick capital to October when we have a much better position of what we're looking at. However, again, there are a number of articles here, so it's really just mathematically trying to come up with the best strategy to hit our overall objective, which I believe everyone would agree would be to try to maintain our excess levy capacity, as we know we have a school coming up. In order to fund that school, we need to have available budgetary bonding capability, which will be our excess levy capacity. But let me walk you through a couple other items. So I wasn't here at the last meeting, but I know Tom presented the cemetery articles, which was really just taking from trust accounts, their own perpetual care. So when you look at the top, you have raise and appropriate, free cash, stabilization, enterprise, transfers. So under transfers, there's two amounts there. They're for that purpose, but they need to be voted through town meeting and, as it says, transferred into an article. All right, so that's pretty easy there. Let me jump you to the total right-hand side, which is authorization to borrow. That was the article we just heard earlier tonight from Dave Condrey for water. That will be borrowing from the state revolving fund, AKA the Clean Water Trust. As you heard earlier, we have no intentions of actually bonding $4 million. The number could, and there is a component of loan forgiveness there. So we potentially would probably borrow from them in the area of $2.6 million, something like that. And it's a very low interest rate, 1%, 1.5%. All will be funded through the enterprise fund and user fees. And actually, to that note, as I was alluding to earlier, all to plan right now. So, like, very proud of their success and how everything's been unfolding. So that's that, and then let me just really draw your attention to the big item, which is the $2.8 million that's just coming out of stabilization. Why stabilization? Because we're trying to hit goals and objectives to maintain the bigger picture. If we do not do that, then we will not be able to hit our $5.5 million excess levy capacity number without certainly sacrificing other areas of the budget. And I think it's pretty clear that we've really trimmed as much as possible with the operational budget. And to that note, I mean, we hit a 2.5%. I don't think we've hit that since I've been here. So it's a really good number. I'm really pleased and happy with the school committee for their unprecedented cooperation. It's really great. They're at 2.2%. I don't think we've hit that number with the school since I have been here. So a lot of great cooperation I did the tour of Milford. I've been in front of like every committee possible, and everyone understood. Not everyone's happy about it, I get that, but to hit 2.5% overall, I think is really fantastic, and given the situation we're in, I think it's great. Obviously, the 2.8 million is not great, but it is what it is, and this is the best scenario that I would present for us to handle all of the above.
Thank you, Zach. Yeah, I think we had a very tall challenge with the budget this year, and I think that the departments were, for the most part, cooperative, and I thank you guys for everything you've done. And I think we should be very happy with where we ended up, putting an asterisk regarding the incident. Could you have shaved a couple of bucks more here or there from somebody? I think in the grand scheme of things, given the level of cooperation we've had, so I would support the school number. I think they made a good faith effort with us there. And to the earlier question, and you can see this is the reason why I deferred the vote on the source of funding for the settlement, because people really need to understand the big picture. And if we don't take it out of stabilization, you're either giving a major hit to the excess levy capacity, or we'd effectively be cutting everybody's budget by another 1.5%, which would be chaotic at this stage. That's a fair assessment?
Very fair.
Yeah. We are talking about using some of the stabilization for whatever ends up getting done with the school, so there's going to be a little less money there, but we have to take the facts as we find them and do the best we can, and I think overall, frankly, we've done pretty good. So those are my thoughts. David?
Zach and Tom, excellent job. I don't think you can get the cooperation from the department heads without you two working with them. The collaboration is just fantastic. The only question I had was, I noticed, so the article that's bringing back these back to free cash, right? Because I noticed, I think there was like a $60,000 balance left in free cash from your source schedule?
Yes.
Does that get added? Does this get back added to it? Like
Yes,
maybe 700,000 when this comes back?
As of once I recertify the.
Yeah, when you recertify, it goes back. Okay, so it's so we're really not at we're potentially at 700K, not this 60K.
In theory, yes.
In theory, yes.
Yes, it closes out to the undesignated fund balance. It's a big formula that derives, but yes, in theory, yes.
Okay, thank you.
Did you have a question, Alan?
No, it's just, we've done this for years where we intentionally leave money in free cash in the fall. So if any emergencies come up in the spring, if we don't spend it, it just falls to the general fund.
Yeah.
And when he does his magic voodoo reconciliation, we find out the total.
Yeah, this is the closest we've come down. I don't know, maybe.
Right.
I mean, the snow is the snow, right? And actually, I think we had about 60 inches, so he was only about 25,000 an inch, which is better than some years. I don't know if that's because of the big one storms at a time.
It wasn't too bad. Yeah.
Anybody else? Okay, so what I would suggest is we have a vote. Unless somebody wants to pull pieces of this out, I would make one omnibus vote on approval of Article 4, which will also include a funding source. Well, let's do this.
And associated funding sources.
And associated funding sources. Is Article 4, I mean, I'm really going back to Article 16 in some sense too, right?
I would suggest you vote Article 4, and then you could vote the funding sources in total.
Yeah.
But I would
all right, so
Why?
should we just do it all at once?
If we vote Article 4 to approve that, and the associated funding sources. Doesn't that take care of it, Zach?
But Article 4 is the budget, right? That's
It's your budget, too.
It's our, but the budget does not include a stabilization fund?
No.
So it's-
Article 4 is the
Article
operational
4,
budget.
that's- So two votes. So two votes. So we're going to have a vote on Article 4, and then we'll have a separate vote on payment from all the respective funding sources, I guess. Yeah. Okay, can I have a motion?
Approval Article 4.
Okay, motion by Al to approve Article 4, second by Bill. Roll call.
Yes.
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 Lauren?
Yes.
Jerry? Unanimous with an abstention of Jerry. And so now, I mean, is it just on the 2.8, Zach? Is there any other authorization we need for anything else that we're doing here?
I think you've individually already.
I think that's right.
Yeah.
I think that's right. So I think now we're just approving the funding source for Article 16 with the understanding that other articles have already addressed all of the other transfers and payment authorizations. So can I have a motion to fund Article 16 from stabilization?
I'll make a motion to approve
It's a
that
motion by
funding.
David,
Second.
seconded by Nick. Roll call.
Yes.
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 Lauren?
Yes.
Jerry? Unanimous with an abstention of Jerry. Is there any other business that we have for tonight?
Motion to go home.
Motion by Al to adjourn.
Second.
Seconded by
Second.
She can have it.
David.
Already home.
David.
Yes.
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 Hey, great job, guys.
Lauren.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Yes.
Jerry is abstaining. We're adjourned.
I didn't think you were coming tonight.
So.